Lions. I am back with chapter 2 of Tom's Sausage Lion. Remember at the end of chapter 1 it had got to the dog being in the bin rather than Tom, which was a bit annoying, but nobody believing him. So let's carry on with chapter 2. Oh, and if I just move to one side, you can see some of the lions and the forest artwork from some of the elms that are in school. So well done with all the lovely stuff you're sending through to me. There's been some amazing work going on. Keep up the good work. Anyway, chapter 2. Only one thing mattered to Tom now. He had to prove to his mother and father that he had not been making it all up. And there was only one way to do that. He had to find the lion and bring him home. He had no idea how he was going to do it, but he had to try. So every day for the rest of the holidays, Tom searched the farm and the high moor beyond for some trace of the lion. He took Sam with him, hoping he would be able to pick up the scent and follow it. Sam found plenty of rabbits and hares and pheasants, and he chased them all over the moor, but he could find no lion. There were no footprints to follow either, because the ground was bone hard with frost. Even the puddles were frozen over. His mother and father were too busy lambing the sheep to bother where he was. So long as he came back on time for meals, they asked no questions. By the time he went back to school, they had quite forgotten about Tom's sausage lion. Tom knew it was no good trying to make them believe him anymore. They would never believe him now, not until they saw the lion for themselves. Tom was very happy to go back to school that term. Upcott Farm, where he lived, was over 3 miles from town, so that he hardly ever saw his school friends in the holidays. At home there was only Sam to talk to about his lion, and Tom was never really sure whether Sam believed him or not. Remember, Sam's the dog. When he got on the school bus that first morning, he was longing to tell someone about his lion. He hardly waited till he sat down before he told them the whole story. "Twice I seen him," he said. "Once with Mrs. Blunden's sausages and once with the turkey. Massive he was, got green eyes, at least I think they were green, and you should have seen his teeth, long as my fingers they were. He crushed those turkey bones like they were wafers." When he had finished, he looked around at his friends. They were all open-mouthed. None of them said anything until Barry Parsons spoke up. Barry Parsons had never liked Tom, and Tom had never much liked him. Tom had taken his place as right back in the school football team, and Barry had never forgiven him. "Pull the other one, Tom," said Barry. "Aren't no lions around here?" "Well, I seen him," Tom said, looking round at the others. He could see that they didn't believe him either. "It's true, I did." "Who else saw it then?" Barry asked. "Just me," Tom said quietly. "Wasn't anyone else there, but I saw him right up close, honest." "Then why didn't he eat you, if you were that close?" Barry went on. "S'pose you shook his paw and wished him a happy Christmas?" And then the others began to laugh. Barry left his seat and went down on all fours in the gangway and crawled up and down the bus, roaring like a lion, clawing at everyone and shouting out, "Got any sausages? I'm Tom's lion. Got any turkey? I'm Tom's lion." And the whole bus howled with laughter. Tom turned his face to the window so they couldn't see how angry he was. He just could not understand why no one would believe him. Even his best friends were laughing at him. Well, he'd show them. He'd show them all. Mr. Morgan was Tom's class teacher. He was funny when he was in a good mood, and horrible when he was not. And this morning Mr. Morgan was not in a good mood. He told them so as soon as he came into the classroom. "Some idiot skidded into my car on the way to school this morning, so I'm not a happy man. Understand?" "Yes, sir," they chorused. "It's your job to make me happy, isn't it?" "Yes, sir." So I want each of you to tell me the best thing, the funniest thing, or the most exciting thing that's happened to you during the holidays. He came to Tom's desk and looked down at him. And what's the matter with you, Tom Goss? You look down in the mouth this morning. I recognise a fellow sufferer. You're usually a cheerful sort of Charlie, Tom. First day of term? Is that what it is? Yes, sir, said Tom. Same for all of us. Mr. Morgan sighed and shook his head. Still, we mustn't feel sorry for ourselves, must we? We'll start with you, Tom. Stand up then. Don't be shy. Tom stood up. He couldn't think of anything to say. Everyone was looking at him, waiting. Come on, Tom, said Mr. Morgan. What about Christmas Day? Something good must have happened on Christmas Day, surely. Did you get any nice presents? He got a lion, said Barry, and then the whole class broke into giggles. Oh dear, said Mr. Morgan, advancing towards Barry's desk, silencing the class as he went. Oh dear, Barry the clown is back, but he's come to the wrong place, hasn't he? This isn't a circus, boy. No, it's my class, see? And when I ask you to speak, you'll speak. And until then, it's put a sock in it. There's a good boy. Else I'll get ugly. And you don't want me ugly, do you? No, sir, said Barry. Good. Now, Tom, what's all this about a lion? Tom looked at Mr. Morgan. Like all the children, he'd always been a little bit frightened of him. Everyone knew he had a wicked temper, but he had no choice now. He couldn't get out of it. I saw him on Christmas Eve first, Tom said. In the orchard it was. What? A lion? A real live lion, Mr. Morgan said. Tom nodded, and there were only one or two snickers around him, swiftly silenced by a glance from Mr. Morgan. Go on, boy. I'm listening. Well, sir, he was walking through the apple trees with Mrs. Blunden's sausages hanging out of his mouth, and when he saw me, he just ran off. Almost tripped over them, he did. Tripped over what? Mr. Morgan asked. The sausages, sir, Tom said. Then I saw him again the next day, just after tea on Christmas Day. He was just outside the back door, sir, helping himself to the turkey bones Mum had put out in the dustbin, and he saw me too. I saw him clear as day. Ah, but I thought you said it was after tea, said Mr. Morgan. So it would be getting dark, wouldn't it? I had the outside light on, sir, Tom said. It was a lion. Honest, it was, sir. Just like I've seen in books and on the telly. Mr. Morgan thought for a moment, and then his face broke into a smile. That's what I like, Tom. A boy with a bit of imagination. It's a good story. Only one thing wrong with it. If this lion saw you, why didn't he attack you? I mean, you're a fairly tasty morsel for a hungry lion, I'd have thought. And everyone was laughing openly now. But it's true, sir, Tom shouted. It's not only a story, it's true, every word of it. Mr. Morgan's smile vanished. Take care, boy. I won't be shouted at, and I won't be lied to. It's not a lie, sir, Tom said. Then who else saw it? Mr. Morgan said. You must have called someone when you saw it outside the back door. No one else saw it, Barry interrupted. Silence! Mr. Morgan bellowed, and he turned back to Tom. So you found a lion outside your back door, and you never called anyone? Yes, sir, I did, sir. I called my mum and dad, and Uncle Bertie and Auntie Rose were there too, and they came. So they saw it too, then? No, not exactly, Tom said. Well, what do you mean, not exactly? Well, by the time they got there, he'd run off, and Sam was there instead. Sam? My dog, sir. But the lion was there, sir. I know he was. Honest, sir. Honest? Honest? You don't know the meaning of the word, Mr. Morgan thundered. Do you expect me to believe you saw a real live lion running around with a string of sausages and helping itself to your Christmas turkey? Now, either you're lying to me, Tom, or you had too much cider at Christmas and you were seeing things that weren't there. Boys your age shouldn't be drinking cider. I don't like cider, sir, said Tom defiantly, and I'm not lying. All fear of Mr. Morgan now left him. He felt suddenly quite alone in the world, and stronger for it. I saw that lion, he said, looking Mr. Morgan straight in the eye. Mr. Morgan gave him every punishment there was. He was sent to Miss Colvin, the headmistress, where he was questioned for over 20 minutes. She didn't believe him either. She said she was disappointed in him and that liars often ended up in trouble. In break, he had to write out, I must not lie, 100 times, and he spent the rest of the morning standing with his face to the corner. By the lunch break, everyone in the school knew of the story of Tom's sausage lion, and even some little infants came up and growled at him in the cloakroom when he was putting on his coat and scarf. They clawed at his back and they ran off shrieking when he turned around. Claire Newman was standing by the door. She was the butcher's daughter, and she was the cleverest girl in Tom's class. She always had her head in some book or other. She was tiny enough to be an infant. And she wore great thick glasses that she was always losing or breaking. There always seemed to be a piece of elastoplast holding them together. She had an open book in her hand. Was it this one? She asked, walking over to him. Was it the same as this one? Tom thought for a moment she was teasing him, but then he remembered. Claire Newman was not like that. He looked down at the book. The cougar, puma, or mountain lion, he read out loud. And there was a picture of the same kind of lion he had seen in the orchard on Christmas Eve. That's him! That's just like him, Tom said. But how do you know? Because I seen him, just like you did. That's why, said Claire. I was on the rounds with my dad. Christmas Eve it was. Dad was delivering Mrs. Blunden's meat, and I was waiting for him in the van. I looked up, and there he was looking through the window at me. We just looked at each other for a moment, and then he ran off. Well, didn't you tell your dad? Tom asked. Of course I did. But he didn't believe me. I could hardly believe it myself, not till I heard you telling Mr. Morgan. See, I'd left my glasses at home. I'm always forgetting them, and I'm as blind as a bat without my glasses. Everyone knows that. Can't see a sausage without them. That meant to be funny, is it? Tom said. No, Claire said. And then she laughed. It wasn't meant to be, but come to think of it, it was quite funny, wasn't it? Tom smiled for the first time that day. I'm glad you believe me, he said. I was beginning to think I was imagining things. Well, we weren't, were we? Said Claire. So, Tom has got another witness, somebody else who saw the lion too. I think Tom and Claire are going to probably have to work together. It's going to take some convincing, but come back for chapter 3 and we'll see if they find that lion. See you soon!